Hello YouTube, and hopefully welcome Veritasium. Recently I've seen a video by Veritasium called There's Something Faster Than Light. And in that video, Veritasium discusses the problem of quantum entanglement. That problem goes back to an original discussion by Einstein, Podolsky and Rosen versus Bohr. And there's been an experiment by John Bell in regards to that sheds quite some light onto the problem. And then Veritasium goes on to quickly tap into the many worlds interpretation as a suggested solution to the problem. Now, watching the video and given my physics background, had an additional idea, an additional solution to that hasn't been properly considered as far as I've seen, and that I want to offer. But before I go into my suggested solution, let me quickly give a recap of the video by Veritasium. By the way, the link is in the description below, of the arguments made there. So the original discussion between EPR and Bohr has been EPR on one side, they suggested that entanglement stems from a local hidden variable, like something you cannot perceive, and that comes into effect basically when someone perceives one of the two entangled particles. So let's say one particle goes that way, another of the entangled particle goes that way, one has a spin-off up, and once you perceive that, well, you will also know that the spin of the other goes down. But it originally stems from a hidden variable that was defined locally when those two still were together. While on the other hand, Bohr made the argument that, well, I actually tapped into that Bohr made the argument that the moment you perceive that spin, that is when the wave function of those entangled particles collapses, and this one then basically gets its downward spin, for example. Okay. So now John Bell proposed an experiment that was very well explained by Veritasium. Please check it out there. John Bell basically showed that you probably have to stick with a non-local solution to the issue. So you probably have to stick with a solution where the information is not then transmitted when the particles are still together, but an information that is, sorry that I say information, but that the wave function or something collapses once you perceive those particles. And to what the last word has been spoken, at least as I found it, by this paper here, like loophole-free Bell inequality violation using electron spin separated by 1.3 kilometers. You can find it on Wikipedia and in other places. So they made a very good, very clear experiment that rules out a lot of earlier questions and discussions about the thing. So we can basically say John Bell was right. We have to deal with something that maybe at least seems to be non-local. I'll go into that in a moment. So then also, when I am saying what I just said, people might think, hey, but Clyde, if I, perceive this and only then the wave function breaks down or the wave function collapses and only then the other spin appears, then I should be able to transmit something faster than light, right? Because the wave function collapses instantly. So I should be able to communicate somewhat in the past. And that is countered, mind you, by a theory called the no communication theory. So, but it's a theorem, it's not proven. So supposedly, according to those theorems, you cannot communicate into the past, and they make some good arguments for that. So last point, Veritasium argues that, like the many worlds theory, what happens when, for example, you have those things going in different directions, and to not communicate faster than light, what if instead of the wave function collapsing, just the other options exist as well? So the moment I perceive one of those entangled particles, suddenly I have not only this reality exists, but suddenly also the other possibility exists as well, just in another quote-unquote world. So basically a multiverse, continuously expanding, very Marvel style. So Veritasium hints to that theory, and with that I can actually jump into my argument. Now I want to go into my suggested solution. Why I hold the many worlds theory completely impossible is if with each entangled particle I suddenly have an additional quote-unquote world, or in case of like any comic book interpretations, with every decision I have an additional world. Well, explain to me where the energy is coming from for all those many worlds, When you tell me where all the energy is going to come from, since like with all the particles, since the Big Bang and everything, then I'm starting to discuss that theory. Until then, I hold the many worlds theory utterly impossible. Next point, how to solve the disagreement between EPR and Bohr without faster than light communication and without breaking the no communication theorem. Now we have, pick another color here. We have the same setup. We still have particles that are entangled. The entanglement is important. So they start here, one particle goes there, the other one goes the other direction. I've painted that a few times now while I was thinking. And now, instead of we have this one, we perceive it. The moment we perceive it, we know the spin is that way. So instead of the information about the spin, of the collapse of the wave function and everything, instead of this information traveling faster than light to this other location, instead of that, because faster than light, not possible, instead of that, how about the information just ripples backward in time here? I'm going into the backward in time in a moment. So if the information about the spin ripples backward in time back here, this doesn't have to be faster than light. This can be just normal light speed, just the different direction. And now you would say, hey, but Clyde, then you automatically have faster than light communication. Well, nope, because if this ripples backward in time, then the information also has to ripple forward in time to this place here. That way, you are not breaking the no communication theorem, because you cannot communicate back in time, because the moment you perceive that entangled particle and collapsing the wave function, quote unquote, well, you're also collapsing the other one. So you can't communicate back to this point, because this one is defined at the same time. This one up here is defined at the same time as I defined this one down there. That way, no faster than light communication, no communication theorem breakage. No communication theorem breakage. So you have a wave function in that direction, well, in each of the directions anyway. So you have a wave function which might function as a carrier wave. I don't know. Some folks might think about this. However, all you need to do to transfer that is switch a prefix, make a plus or minus. Yeah. Well, for the temporal direction, have fun in the comments. If there's any comments, I mean, the channel isn't very big. Also, by the way, an interesting point, like I've had a theory since I was like in the university, and I think this may disprove this theory. If it would work this way, it would prove that there is a temporal dimension that actually exists. Now you all might be saying, hey Clyde, but there is a temporal dimension. Well, maybe there isn't. With that, have fun. Thank you and bye-bye.